Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Randstad Enterprise Talent Navigator Series Global In-Demand Skills Webinar 2024. My name is Attila Kerkesh, and I'm a marketing business partner at Randstad Enterprise, and I will be your host this afternoon, morning, or evening, of course, depending on wherever on the world you are at the moment. Before we begin, let's review a few housekeeping items. First, at the bottom of your screen, there are multiple tools that you can use. All of these tools and also the slides are resizable and movable, so make yourself at home, and you're welcome to move around them and get the most out of your monitor space. If you have any questions during the event, you can submit them through the Q&A engagement tool. We will try to answer all of these at the very end of our event, but if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, we will come back to you for sure. All of the questions are recorded. The same goes, by the way, for any technical problems. Please also submit those via the Q&A, and we'll make sure to do our best to help you resolve them. As always, a recording of the event will be available after the event concludes and can be accessed using the same audience link that we sent you earlier. However, everyone that registered will receive a link to the on-demand version of our session, and will also be available on our website as well. So after all the housekeeping, let's introduce our speakers. So we have with us today Joost Heins, our Global Head of Intelligence, and Matt Górecki, our Talent and Market Intelligence Manager. So let's not waste more time and dive right into our session. Joost, you have the con.
Thank you so much, Attila. We are very excited to be here with you today. We're very excited to show our research, and we thought, what is the best way of starting with that by going in and diving deep in and get your brain moving on all the things that we found. So we thought maybe it's good to start first with a couple of questions that we have for you to start getting into the right mindset of things that we found very interesting results from our research. So my first question that I have is, where do you think, if you want to hire anywhere in the world, junior female AI talent, what would be the best place for that? So give that a moment to think about. What do you think? What are your ideas of what could be that best location? And I'll share it in a minute, because it surprised us a little bit, because it is in fact APAC, and specifically if you zoom into APAC, then it is in Australia and in India, where you see the best mix of junior AI talent with the best mix between male and female. Now, in general, you see that about 1 in 5 of the overall AI talent is female, so that is not very balanced. But at least in India and in Australia, you see a little bit better balance. The next question to kind of get your brain moving on this topic is, where do you think, in which countries do you think do employers offer the most remote jobs? So give it a second to think about what area of the world would you expect has adopted remote work the most. And like I said, again, for us, this was a bit of a surprise, because it is actually in the countries that are the first movers in the SSE space. So Poland, Hungary, Czechia, those are the countries that currently offer in their job ads the best remote opportunities. And Matt later on will go into more detail on how that matches with talent, their wishes and desires. But I thought it was an interesting one to think of, because it was not necessarily the place where we had expected to see the most remote options. Also interesting to see is that with Mexico and Romania, there are definitely countries that have also adopted a lot of SECs, but actually is a little bit lower there. And our theory on that is that you see the countries that have moved earlier in that SSE space, that they're already used to working independently from other locations for companies, and therefore are a bit more comfortable in offering that remote work. Then last but not least, of course, this is the in-demand skills research. What do you think is the most difficult skill cluster to hire for? So what skill cluster do you think has the fiercest competition when it comes to finding this talent? And again, if you would have asked me up front, I would have put AI really high up there, but it was actually audit and compliance that had the highest job vacancy rate, so the highest of unfilled jobs, and therefore the most complex or fiercest competition to hire those skills. So this is one of the few tidbits that we found in our research that we're very happy to share with you today. And we today will walk you through a couple of things. First of all, we want to walk you through what is the in-demand skills report. So what have we looked at? What scope is it? So that you get a good feeling of what you can find in the report and how you can use it. Then, second of all, Matt will talk you through what are our key findings. There are a couple of things when you look at this amount of data that is interesting and that can help inform you to take the best course of action when it comes to securing this type of talent for your organization. And last, but definitely not least, Matt is going to walk you through a couple of really practical examples on how you can use our interactive dashboard. So a couple of things that you might wonder, how does it work? And you can actually go in, use a dashboard, and slice and dice the data in such a way that it will answer your questions. So with that said, I want to move on to the first topic. So what is the skills in-demand skills report? Well, it is our research that we've done in 23 different markets across the globe, where we looked at more than 130 million talent profiles in these in-demand skills clusters. And when I talk about skill clusters, these are not just individual skills. Every skill cluster is made up out of multiple skills. And in total, we have looked at more than 70 different skills. And also, we have looked at 5 million job ads to really understand what is the dynamic in these in-demand skill clusters, to understand how can you, as a company, make sure that you secure this talent that almost every company is looking for in the best way possible. Also, what is new this year and that we're quite proud of is that we have a for you available interactive dashboard on our website. We thought we have so much data. It is probably the best way to unlock that for you by allowing yourselves to move around on the dashboard and filter in ways that you want. Now, what are those skill clusters that I was talking about? A lot of these are probably not surprising to you. You probably have seen this. You probably recognize that these are skill clusters that every company is looking for, and especially with graying populations in a lot of countries across the globe, are relatively hard to recruit for, or are very popular at this moment and are very impactful for companies going forward. Of course, AI and automation is up there, but maybe more surprisingly is that customer service is there. When we look at customer service, we still see that there is a very high demand for this type of roles, and we don't see enough candidates in the market. So that's why it also made this year our list. I would be very interested to see if it also is on the list for next year. Because it is one of those areas where we expect that automation, especially through large language models, can impact the labor market quite a bit. But if we look at the market right now, we still see that there's quite fierce competition for the skills in that skill cluster. To have a better understanding of these skill clusters, we put on a couple of different lenses and we look at different dimensions at these skills. Of course, compensation on what the talent asks for working for your company, and the salaries and the cost, of course, that comes out of that is an important factor for you as a company when you're hiring this type of talent. Also, gender diversity, see if you can get the right male-female balance in your organization is very important and is an area that we have made available for you. Remote and hybrid working, I find it a very interesting topic. When you see currently the news and the return to office that is required from a lot of companies, and on the other hand, the wishes and desires from talent, it is a very interesting element to keep in mind when you think about your proposition to this type of talent. Then I'll go a little bit further into the skills and motivations after this, but that is an aspect that I think is more and more important, especially if you think about in-demand skills. How can you upskill, reskill, and how can you approach this way with our model of thinking around skills? And obviously, we need to talk about supply and demand of the skills. Next up, one thing that I am quite passionate about, and that is our human potential model. In our human potential model, we distinguish between different types of skills. We think that if you look at a job ad, it doesn't always reflect what person you're actually looking for. We often forget about the core skills that somebody has. What are the skills that really makes a person a person? In many job ads, if you look at them and you dissect them and you look at what skills they're looking for, they're often looking at what we call learned skills. These are the skills that you can learn based on the World Economic Forum, at least, within 6 months. And if you combine that with motivations and aspirations, you have a full view of what kind of people you are actually looking for. And I often think that if you combine core skills and the right motivations and aspirations, you can basically pick up any skill. But still, if we look at the job ads, most companies are looking for those learned skills. And I hope that this is a little bit of a call to action as well, to use our research and start thinking about skills in a slightly different way, especially in those high in-demand skill clusters, because it is an opportunity to weigh out, to actually find talent that has the right core skills, that have the right personalities, and of course the right motivations to work on the work that they're really excited about. So with that said, a quick summary of what you can expect in our research, which you hopefully have already seen, but good to realize that we not only have the interactive dashboard on our website, but we also have an executive summary in which we highlight all the trends that we see come out of our research of the more than 130 million talent profiles in these clusters that we have analyzed, and the over the 5 million job ads that we have analyzed as well. So with that said, I really would like to hand it over now to Matt, who is the brain behind this whole research and knows every little data point by heart. And so please, Matt, take it away.
Thank you very much, Joost, and hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'll be very glad to take you through the executive summary of ours, and at the end of the session, take you through the actual dashboard and show you some of the practical examples and the practical use of the data that you can really cross-reference in many, many different ways based on your actual needs. So let's start with a little bit of a housekeeping item, some definitions. And Joost did an introduction in terms of different skill levels, skill clusters. I really want to highlight that whenever we'll be talking about the supply, we'll be referencing the talent that basically have the matching skills for either the particular skill cluster or one of the sub skills that are basically the building blocks for the skill clusters. Now, in terms of the demand, we're effectively referring the advertisement and how it has been really done is we extracted different keywords, phrases, and elements from the advertisement to build up the numbers behind the demand pool. Now, I would say the most frequently asked question, JVR, job vacancy rate, which is a metric used by say multiple institutions, one of those being like European Union Committee, is basically a measure that defines the complexity of hiring. It's a balance of both of those things, supply and demand, and what it really tells you is how hard is it to really hire the talent on the particular market. And that can be applied to different levels, the whole skill cluster, or each individual sub-skill. With that in mind, 1% is being the normal market state. So anything above that makes the market a little bit more complex. Moving to the actual findings and the executive summary, I really want to highlight how those skill clusters are actually being rated in terms of the global complexity. And out of the interesting facts, as you mentioned, AI and automation isn't actually the first one, at least in terms of the overall skill cluster composition. It's audit and compliance. I really want to show you how that really looks in terms of the different countries, and also give you a little bit of a background on why that might be, right? We've seen a lot of changes in regulations lately. We've seen the rise of the remote work, and basically that being like one of the key core components that is there to stay. We've seen a lot of regulations regarding the green economy and elements tied to that. You can actually see that specialists in those areas are more and more needed, and they're not really that abundant, right? There's not that much talent that deals with this kind of topics. Therefore, they are being elevated in the first place. Now, a couple of things you have to keep in mind when thinking about the JVR. On a skill cluster level, which are those high-level categories, we combine multiple sub-skills that go into this. And it changes depending on where you go in terms of the geographic location. As you can see, Singapore is actually the most complex country to hire this talent in. What that means is there's a lot of demand and not that much talent that can fulfill this demand. And the second country on the line is US. Then we have the German. So obviously, from this very perspective, you can see that this will change depending on skill cluster, depending on a specific skill set as well. And this is the I would say, go-to point whenever you are looking to define some of your recruitment strategies, or really go to directions for where I might actually get those people, which country I might use for outsourcing talent, where it will be easier to open the specific center. Now, when we actually look at the right-hand side of the slide, you can see how this spreads on the individual skill levels. And none of those, in fact, like no robotics or natural language processing, is part of the audit and compliance skill cluster. However, you see on a skill level, individual skill level, those are the highest, most complex to hire skills. So AI still gets there in some way, but whenever it comes to those complex tasks, that's what actually takes the lead on a global level. Now, to the next topic, as a, I would say, overlapping theme, Singapore and US are two countries in general across all the skill clusters that are most complex to hiring. You will find that the US, Singapore are pretty much always in the territory of really hard, really complex, really challenging to hire. And then when we look at a little bit less complex countries, you can definitely see Spain there, India, even Sweden and Norway, which in normal, normally I would say haven't been considered easy markets, but at the same time, whenever we look at the current demand on those markets, they're not really creating that much of a challenge as some of the other markets that you can see across the research. And one more interesting fact from the perspective of the seniority. Whenever it comes to hiring the talent in countries, in the Western countries, what you would certainly see is a little bit of a difference in terms of the senior talent proportions to the overall population of the skill cluster. So what that means, whenever you look at the JVR levels, hiring complexity levels, countries like US don't have that much of a difference in terms of how hard, how complex is it to hire this talent when I actually want to have certain threshold of experience. What, however, comes to be quite interesting, especially in the AI example that's been there on the slide, is like India, for example, whenever you take the baseline of the AI and automation being 1.6, which is really low, and you actually try to look only for the senior talent, the actual complexity increases 4 times. And so what you can really tell, in absolute numbers, there's still a lot of talent there. There's not that much demand, but if there is, it's mostly dedicated towards the senior talent, right? So you would actually see how this changes from the West to the East, and you can actually expect more senior talent to be present in the Western countries, but also the competition to be much fiercer. And with that, I'll move to the second part of it, which we also perceive extremely interesting from the skills level, which is directly, like, this is something that many of you would call soft skills. We use the core skills as was the phrase to define those. And there's a couple of themes that are aligned with the core skills that are also not only persisting from the last year, but also some of the emerging trends we can see. First of all, general raise of interest of employers in emotional intelligence and learning, sort of reskilling, have been one of the key growth elements when it comes to what we're really publishing in terms of the advertisement, what's out there, how employers are looking for the employees. This is one of those factors that is certainly connected to some of the, I would say, the global events, those that I did mention, like, again, the globalization, like the rise of certain things within the green economy, or AI, in particular, things related to ethics of AI, etc. And this is very well recognized by employers, but employees don't necessarily use that indication on their profiles. They don't build and structure their CVs in a way that you could actually tell that some of those soft skills, core skills, are the strong suit of the candidates, which is really important to think of whenever going through the candidates assessment or just generally reviewing the markets. This can also differ depending on the culture and geography, right? We can see some of the geographies being much stronger in different areas of soft skills because it's just culturally aligned to sort of emphasize that and go towards this direction. Now, whenever we move a little bit further, you can also see some persisting themes from the last year. In this particular example, the ownership and the drive, which is super important when it comes to the remote work, like this sense of ownership that I have this particular task, I will see that from the start to the end, is one of the things that kind of keeps reappearing basically since we went into this remote working modus. Right, so employers definitely value that and want their employers to have this. And one of the things that I did mention to some extent already, which is specifically around the discrepancies for the employees and employers in terms of how they structure those elements tied to their CVs versus what job descriptions are really expecting. So what I really want you to take away with this point is that the element of assessment of the elements, like the core skills, might actually prove a little bit more important because you might not necessarily be able to immediately see that, especially if you're using some software like AI software that potentially helps you match the candidates with the right skills on the job, right? You would very rarely pick the soft skills in the way they are. So that's something you definitely have to pay attention to because they're quite well hidden. Now, with that, we'll move to one of the hottest topics in general in terms of the current work landscape. There's a lot of opinions on what companies should do. There's some certain strong drives from different regions as well. And one of the things we can see with the remote and hybrid adoption is that those historically SSC countries are really having the highest share of remote opportunities, both actually remote and hybrid. And what that really tells us is that countries that previously established centers in a specific city and were drawing the talent to this city, by embracing the remote work, are actually trying to get the talent from the whole country, making it much more flexible hiring and giving them much more options to do so, right? So basically the SSC countries are sort of doubling down on this phenomenon of remote work. And the further west we go, we actually can see that countries like Netherlands, that also because of the sort of geography and the size of the country, but the share of the remote work would be relatively small, but then the hybrid work becomes much more relevant, right? And you would see this aspect across most of the Western economies, so it's less remote and more hybrid. And with that in mind, I just really want to put that out there that the general share of the remote work across whole markets have been dropping. Not significantly, but has been dropping since the pandemics. But for the skills that we have in here that are niche and that are to remain niche, at least for foreseeable period of time, those shares are actually still high, well, and healthy, so to put it. And also the fact that has been mentioned already, APAC countries don't see that much of a remote adoption, right? You wouldn't see that much of an advertisement being dedicated towards remote talent. You wouldn't see that being extremely common practice, but it's still out there in the shares that I would say are quite substantial to consider whenever it comes to the hiring strategies. So something you really have to think of. And the part that I did to some extent cover, the more niche you go, right? So whenever you go into areas of automation and AI, even the audit and compliance, the higher the percentage of the remote options is there. Because as I've mentioned, whenever you can't find talent locally, you try to pursue the other options. And I really want to contradict that with the next slide, which is part of our work monitor research, which portrays, like as in demand portrays the employers, the work monitor portrays the employees' perception. And as you can see, remote work became such a strong aspect of the day-to-day work life that 37% of employees wouldn't accept the job if they haven't been provided with the flexible work location. So that's extremely high number considering where we were 5 years ago, right? And this is the overall flexibility generally translates a little bit to the new generation joining the workforce. Obviously, I don't think any of you is surprised that things like my personal life is more important, or I would quit my job if that would be affecting my my personal life, are relatively high. I would say they're actually relatively low if you look at this on the importance of those aspects. But at the same time, the further we go with the new gen joining the market, Gen Z, you can actually see that those themes are being more strongly emphasized by them, right? The work-life balance is important thing. I want more flexibility. This is something that you really have to pay attention to whenever thinking of the composition of your workforce. I really want to touch base in terms of like mention the flexibility, and I really want to go through the elements that are tied to how employees are actually acting on those markets. What sort of risk do you have when going to the APAC or the North America regions in terms of will the talent stay with me? How often are they looking for jobs? So one of the things I really want to highlight is that whenever we go to APAC, countries like India, Malaysia, you can see there's relatively high share of talent that's permanently actively engaged in sort of job search opportunities, right? This is all over 40%. You would see tons of candidates just being out there on the market waiting for better opportunity. And that not only has to do with the actual remunerations and the sort of impact of things like the raising inflation on I need better remuneration, right? I need to find better opportunity for myself, but it's also about just being open to the development and the growth. So some of the things we really have to pay attention to. Now, whenever we go a little bit west, right, you can see that countries like Czechia, like UK, Norway, all of those countries are effectively below the average, and the levels of stability are slightly different. And you can attribute that to many things, like the regulations, first of all, are different in this part of the globe. So you're whenever you're in a job for a longer period of time, you're better protected in a way. And at the same time, you wouldn't really be risking that in sort of unstable market, which ours has been perceived as such for quite a time. And you would see that those tendencies of people looking for a job actively, updating their CVs, it's not that persistent out there, right? Something I did already mention, which is work-life balance and pay being two most important factors. We'll actually get to that in the next slide right now when it comes to what makes me accept the job, right? And there's, as you can see, this is actually strongly emphasized in the work monitor as well. 55% of the people wouldn't accept the job offer if it wouldn't offer significantly higher pay, which also has to do with the general stability, right? I need some solid incentive to actually change my job. I need solid incentive to sort of help me with the change. And obviously the work-life balance is the second element that's out there. Whenever you look at the importance of those factors, it's I don't think that actually changed across last decade, but those are the things that 93% of the respondents portray as the leading indicators. And just bunch of the statistics in terms of the elements, general, I would say, well-being elements from the work monitor as well, and all of those are really around the work life and the development. And what I actually find quite interesting is that there's quite a significant share of employees that value the stability to the level that they're happy to stay in the role, even if it doesn't offer substantial development opportunities, right, or the career progression. And actually substantial percent of them do not really want to pursue the career progression. They want to stay on the current level. And this is obviously tied to, well, I don't really want to do more. I'm happy where I am, as long as I'm compensated fairly, right? And not many people might actually perceive career progression to be worth it. That's the generational aspect that has been happening very lately on the markets as well. So with that, I want to move to also really interesting factor and something that has been quite persistent in terms of our in-demand research bits in terms of the last years. And as you can see at the bottom, most of the skill clusters still has this bias in terms of the gender diversity. This is declarative gender, by the way. So we did the male and female based on the people who declared they are male or female. And for the tech roles, approximately 21% of talent is actually female, the rest is male. However, this is also something that changes depending on the geography. As you can see, actually Romania is one of the leading countries in terms of the balance when it comes to the enterprise in-demand talent. You would see most equal split in terms of the let's say overall skill clusters, or in terms of the very technical skill clusters, you would actually see I would say more significant shares of the talent being female. For example, 30% in the AI space rather than 20. That's been kind of the usual thing on a global level, right? Then we have this little aspect that you always mentioned about the talent that's joining the markets. Whenever you look at the Western tendencies, you would still see that majority of the talent that enters the space of the tech, whether that's AI, whether that's cloud, they would still be working in favor of the male talent. However, when you move to the APAC region, countries like Australia, countries like India, you can see 44% of the talent that lately joined the market pursuing the career in things like AI being female. So this is a promise for the future in terms of how the structure of those markets might shape. You can see some of the first generation talent in the AI space to be much more diverse because of the development opportunities it offers, but also because of the obviously the certain perception of this being something that's worth my time, that's something that's paying very well, might actually pursue my career in this direction. There's so many things to explore. And one last thing in terms of the general composition of the clusters, customer service roles, finance roles, marketing roles are certainly seeing more diversity, right? In many cases, in many countries you would actually see much more balance in this regard. So like 50-50 split or even split going in favor of the female talent, which is something that well ideally would also be translated to the tech talent in a long term. And that was the last part of my executive summary. What I really want to do right now is take you to the practical aspects of things. So really share some of the dashboard use with you. And we'll go through three cases. One related to building the location strategy. The second one, evaluating the elements tied to hard to hire skills. And the third one, the diversity strategy. So without further ado, I'll just start sharing my my dashboard screen with you. And for those of you that already played around with the dashboard, I just want to emphasize that we're basically giving you all the room to play with, all the data that you wanted. I do firmly believe that's the only dashboard out there that gives you such a flexibility in terms of just reviewing the different elements that you might be interested in with your own perspective. So we really want to make sure that you feel that it's engaging enough and that's something that actually gives you value. And whenever you want to take a deeper dive into your particular roles, your particular case, you can always reach out to us and we'll be happy to explore what sort of options we have. Now, on the dashboard, you will be able to find a little bit of introductions. I'll get back to this visualization in a second. And you'll be able to find the executive summary just right here, as well as the definitions of what markets those are and what each particular section on the dashboard does really represent. So you have a little bit of FAQ being available to you straight away. Now, with the use case, right? What I really want to show you is this particular visualization that's a compilation of those SAP skills that are creating the skill clusters. So let me give you an example of the AI, right? Whenever, oh, I actually have to do the reload. Um, bear with me, please. Um, there we go. It's been too active for a little bit too long, too inactive for a little bit too long. So whenever I go to the AI part, I can see those are the skills that are relevant from the AI perspective. What I can see in here as well is the JVR. The further right we go, the more complex it becomes to recruit this sort of talent with this sort of skills within this skill cluster. And the further up we go, we can see what the demand on the local market is. And I want to use example of Netherlands. If you actually happen to be willing to open an automation hub, automation center in the Netherlands, what you can see in here is that robotics will be one of the most challenging skills to really look for, right? Then you have ethics and compliance, NLP. Um, this is actually computer vision, and some of those elements might change whenever you start considering all the things I was saying before, which is first of all remote work and some of the neighboring countries to potentially feed into your talent funnel, right? So if I go to Germany, for example, which is traditionally considered a relatively hard to hire country, but it doesn't have that high level of demand for AI in particular, as you can see, right? So I can look at the robotics. We went a little bit down in terms of how complex is it to hire this talent, but we also went quite I would say quite significantly down in terms of AI and infrastructure. It's like one of the most technical parts of the skill cluster, right? And you see machine learning actually made it like all the way to 3%. So this is some of the bits that you can use exploring the neighboring countries, and you can build your strategies whenever it comes to the high level strategies of planning, where you should be or what location might actually be good for such a center, or whenever your talent acquisition team might need some hints in terms of where it will be easier to find the talent I'm really looking after, right? So as you can see, you can just click through any of those countries. All those elements are moving around, indicating, well, I might have easier time going to Romania trying to recruit like the computer vision talent, this sort of things. And I'll move to the AI skill cluster with this top button in here to show you a little bit of the second case representation, which is specifically understanding the composition of skills and understanding what I might actually do to be able to acquire this talent better. So first of all, according to the model that Joost shared with you, the core skills, sub skills, motivations are the building blocks of each of those skill clusters. So something you really should be paying attention to is, again, what are motivations of my talent, right? There's, I would say, something that's very specific to me in a way, but I would definitely be more inclined to hire the talent that has strong predispositions and motivations to work in the role. Only then that has strong actual hard skills to basically perform the job, right? All those things are really important, and I think we don't put enough emphasis on understanding those core skills and motivations whenever we're looking for talent. And with that, you can actually see the composition of what we're looking at and go through a couple of elements that the dashboard enables you to. First of all, with the example of Netherlands I used before, you can actually filter through the different countries. Well, in this case, you can zoom in and look how much talent you have in this particular country within the skill cluster. Now, the skill cluster data is a combination of things, right? It can be added to the individual skills, but if I'm interested in those skills on an individual level, just to do like a little bit more detailed dive for what I'm looking to hire on a functional level, I might also see that from this place, right? I can see how many people knows each of those skills and what I will eventually find quite hard to acquire. And I think it's quite interesting bit as well that there's a lot of people that effectively, actually Netherlands is quite special in here, not having automation tools and programs on the top, but there's quite a lot of skills that are kind of tied to the AI by just people using different platforms. But things like AI and infrastructure, for example, are those the most technical bits of the skill cluster, right? Whenever you look at the global level, you see there's only just below 50,000 people that do this kind of thing. Whenever it comes to automation platforms, it's almost 1 million people, right? And you can see that talent availability from different countries' perspective here as well, alongside the active talent. Something that's tied to the job hopping I did mention. This is basically based on people that have updated their CVs, profiles, or just purely stated they're looking for work. So this is the talent that will be on your first line of contact. This is the talent that will be applying to your job description, job advertisements. This is the talent that you might expect to respond quicker and basically actively talk to you whenever you're looking for them for particular skills in the market. And you can also find the information about the split of the contract work. Preferences versus the perm, what candidates really do want, what's the composition of each of the markets from the skill level. Now, what's interesting, and by the way, I just want to highlight that very very quickly. There are some top level findings for each of the skill cluster that you can read through in terms of what this skill cluster is really. What's the differentiation of this skill cluster on a global level? It's a very quick snapshot, but something that you might actually find interesting if you're into the global recruitment market game. Next thing I really want to show you, that's also tied to understanding the complexity of talent and the talent skills, are the skills demand. So the advertisement, right? How do you go about it? Whenever we look at the complexity of hiring, I did mention Netherlands as a starting point, right? Those numbers at the top represent the number of jobs being posted out there, being live, the number of jobs that are asking for the AI and automation talent or the talent that matches this skill cluster. This you can't really add that to get the number on the top. This is the split of the individual skills presence across all the adverts on the market. So what it really tells you is how frequently each of those skills is being asked for. This is sort of a temperature of the functional skill sets on the market. And what it does, what we have on the right hand side is this complexity of hiring. As you can see, AI is being relatively hard to hire in Netherlands, right? And I got robotics on the top, machine learning at the bottom. Which, by the way, 2.7 is still relatively complex to hire. It is just the number, so sort of the lowest comparatively, right? So whenever I did mention some of the examples of different countries I might go to, there we go. Germany overall doesn't have that much demand comparatively to the talent that is in there. So the overall demand for talent is just shy of 2%. So you might actually have easier time recruiting people from Germany to support the Netherlands talent pool, or in comparison, you might actually have easier time getting people for like computer vision from Poland, even though the overall ratio is much higher for the whole skill class, right? So whenever it comes to recruiting only in Poland, you would find that relatively harder based on the talent availability. But some of those individual skill sets you can cross-reference with the different countries. I want to follow up with some information on the compensation, which is, I would say, the very high level of what you can expect from each of the countries in terms of the skill cluster, right? So whenever you look at the sort of low, high salaries, what you can really plan around, this obviously significantly changes once you add some specific skills or once you take a deep dive into each of those individual functions for the skills. But this is something that we could provide you with as well if you are interested in pursuing the details, I would say. Nevertheless, we removed the extremos from there. As you probably are well aware, some of the jobs in AI can pay much more than that, reserved for like the most seasoned specialists. But at the same time, you can use that as a great comparison of the cost calculation, how expensive it would be if I consider this talent in a specific region. And one of the more interesting parts of the dashboard, the remote and hybrid working specifically, which is on the left-hand side, you would be able to see the supply in terms of the remote work. So what candidates say they want to do, how they want to work, and also the hybrid option. So the preferences of the candidates are on the left-hand side, remote, the light blue, hybrid, the dark blue. And this is also split by the individual skill clusters. So what it actually tells you is what talent prefers. When we use the Netherlands example, right, you can see that talent preferences are relatively, I would say, similarly split as they are on a global level. But whenever it comes to advertisement on the right-hand side, which again, the darker color is the hybrid, lighter color is remote, you can see that the employers are much more inclined to offer the hybrid opportunities than the remote opportunities, right? And using this, you can definitely look where I actually have a chance of attracting the talent. This is something that can benefit your strategy in terms of finding out where this sort of an option would be more beneficial, more attractive, considering the market state, versus how it really works out from the perspective of any neighboring geography, right? And as you can see, there's basically twice as high share of candidates that want to work remotely or in a hybrid mode. In terms of Germany, that's even higher um, than the offers on the market. Nevertheless, we still find the hybrid and remote to be really high for the in-demand skills. It's well over 20% in many cases. Obviously, it differs by the skill clusters in terms of things like customer service or engineering. This is something that's much less popular. Also, very often in the finance industry, we wouldn't find those options. But this is the tool that you can really go into and you can play around with to find out, okay, so where am I competitive? This is something that you might use to rethink your strategy to better attract the talent, or just use all those markets around, or even in the further parts of the globe to be your target areas based on what talent prefers versus what the local competition looks like. And with that, I want to move to the gender diversity part and planning your diversity really using some of the dashboard elements. As I did mention, the technical skills are relatively um, well imbalanced, right? You would see 79% of the AI talent actually being male, only 21% being female. Now, please don't look at this from the additive perspective. Those skills compose different roles within the skill cluster, right? So you can't really take an average and receive that, but you then also know which of those individual functions, skill clusters, is more diverse than the other. Right? So using that, you can really play around with different views and different opportunities for how does it really look for my country, right? I go to Netherlands, I see that we're actually below the average with the talent that's out there. Ethics and compliance is actually a little bit more outstanding, let's say. Whenever we go to country like Portugal, for example, to look at the talent, you see those numbers are slightly increasing, right? I have much better chance of finding some balance in the Portuguese market. Keeping in mind this one factor that those are the shares of the talent, right? This is the composition of the local market. The absolute numbers would be different. If you chose India, for example, right? You would see that some of those like AI infrastructure and tools would be much lower, but relatively the absolute number of the talent would be mostly higher than what we can see in the West just because of the country size. Now, you would expect the same in the US. There's a thing I didn't mention previously, but US is basically the biggest demand generator, right? Whenever I did mention that the seniority for the profiles for the supply in the US is higher, you would also see that US is in many cases responsible for 1/3 of the demand for the particular, I would say, highly specialized skill cluster. So you can also see that US has been a little bit differently diversified depending on the skill cluster. But whenever I go to Romania, I can see those ratios actually moving further left. So this is also something you can use to potentially build and think of your future strategy in terms of the diverse talent hiring and where you actually have most chances of finding diverse talent, depending on the individual skill set that you might want to use, that you might find interesting. And also we have some of the global insights listed under each skill cluster, relevant to each skill cluster, just down here. And with that, I'll just tell you that whenever you'll find any of this data interesting and you would like another depth of the information that you didn't find on the dashboard, you want to go to your very specific case down to like a role level or some strategic advisor would be needed on your end. That's pretty much where you can actually click and request to contact us. And with that, I'll pass the voice back to Attila for our Q&A session. So thank you very much, everyone, and hear you in a minute.
Thank you, Joost, and thank you, Matt, to both of you. Great insights shared, and I think we learned a lot and also created hopefully some appetite for the report, as well as this brand new dashboard that the team created. Great job, everyone. So first, thanks to all the questions that you guys submitted through the chat. We tried to answer those as well as we were going. Also, we received some questions via the Q&A. And looking at those, I think I will go with the first one to you, Joost, which is that, given the recent investment into green and sustainability initiatives in the US as well as in the EU, how do you see that? Is this more of an obstacle in terms of talent scarcity, or maybe more of an opportunity to retain more talent for companies?
Yeah, I think in general, it's interesting to see what happens at a macroeconomic level. Even now, at moments where the economy is slowing down a little bit, you still see sustained talent scarcity. It's not at the same levels as it was last year, but it's still much tougher markets than it was a couple of years back. And especially in areas of high investment. We have done some research recently in around green jobs. You see that the investments are really outpacing in how fast people actually transition in these sectors. So I really expect that this is going to be a problem for the energy transition, and that there might now be more money available for the energy transition, but the actual talent is going to be an obstacle. And you see that in different areas such as retrofitting houses and insulation, installing heat pumps, till like also the supporting functions or the engineering functions. So it's throughout the whole type of skills in any organization that works in these areas that you can foresee scarcity. You just have to look at the numbers of like how fast the adoption of solar is going right now. You can imagine that it's going to be very hard to reskill, upskill, or draw in talent from other sectors to actually deliver all the targets to meet the energy transition goals.
Great, thank you, Joost. And then I would go with my second question that we received to you, Matt. And well, it says that if you were an executive HR leader that is about to create a long-term talent strategy, what would be the 2 key elements that all companies should include, in your opinion, if they want to future-proof themselves?
Right. No, that's really interesting one. Thank you. And a good one for the fact. I think from the perspective of where we are right now and how the global market is changing, right? The whole transition to remote would certainly be one of my priority list tasks in terms of making sure that I can leverage the talent from different geographies to fight the short-term talent scarcity. I'm truly becoming a global organization, and I'm able to leverage what's out there, right? Besides the particular small area of focus that it sort of feels like we've been there a couple of years ago. So that's my number one. For the number 2, I would say with how quickly the technology is evolving, the whole spectrum of things that happened with popularization of things like ChatGPT. I would definitely focus on making sure that the talent in my company has ability to pursue the growth in those areas, whether it comes to development of, hey, I want to change the role into something more technical. I want to be given an option of doing so, and evaluating those core skills behind and motivations, right? So leveraging those things that are not that obvious to really build strong and future-proof talent pool. So that would be my answer.
Thank you, Matt. We just received also just a second ago another question. Is more from a technical point of view from the research, that whether we plan to maintain and update this research over time. And I think I can answer that definitely. So this is an annual research. Dashboard is new, it's the first time that we did this year. But yes, definitely you can count on that we will keep this report live and release a new version of that at least every year.
Yeah,
Good.
and also good. Maybe we're keen to hear your feedback on that as well. Like we're interested to see if you find it useful. So if you have any tips for our next iteration, we're also keen to hear that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joost. That's a great shout out. So that was it for the research in the dashboard as a preview. So of course, we would love to have you guys download and take a look at the dashboard in full. So if you take a look at or take out your camera and scan this QR code, this will lead you to right to the dashboards page, where after registration, you will be able to take a look at yourself. And just as Matt was presenting it to us, you can play around with it, see what the data says about different roles, different regions, etc. Excuse me. And also on the website, of course, you can download the report as well. It's a lengthy one, but with lots of great insights and very valuable data. And there is additional thing that on the website of the dashboard, there is also a chance for you to request a consultation of your own with the market intelligence team. So if you go to the website and maybe after playing around with the tool or taking a look at the research, you still have questions unanswered, we'd love to hear from you. And you can book personalized session of yours via the dashboard. You can send us a message. So I think that would be it for today. So thank you so much, first of all, to our speakers, but of course to our audience as well. Really appreciate your time and also the insights shared. And thank you for joining us once again. We hope to see you guys very soon, and also all of our audience members very soon in one of our future sessions. We wish you all a lovely rest of your day and hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today.